You guys are getting a theme song ready to go?
Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. I'm Judith Rosenbaum. I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish Women's Archive, and I'm really honored to welcome you to today's celebration of the 2018-2019 Rising Voices cohort. Thank you all for joining us. I promise you that we will try to bring some sunshine and spring energy to this otherwise, unfortunately, gray and rainy day. I know that most of you are familiar with JWA, but I want to make sure everybody has a little bit of the context of our work outside of the fellowship, or in addition to the fellowship. JWA is a digital archive that is devoted to documenting and sharing Jewish women's voices and elevating their voices and harnessing history as a tool for social change. Our resources are used by more than 1.5 million people around the world every year. And though we call ourselves an archive, we have never only been focused on the past. We've always been interested in documenting history as it's unfolding and documenting the history makers around the world, as well as acknowledging the ways that history shapes our understanding of ourselves and of the world around us. And the Rising Voices Fellowship, which is one of our newer programs, is really our investment in the future and an expression of our deep trust and faith in you all, in the next generation of women leaders. And we are learning so much from you already. Today's Siyyum is the culmination of our 5th national cohort of the Rising Voices Fellowship. We, over the course of a year, bring together the Rising Voices Fellows, which is a pluralistic group of young women from around the country who come together through monthly webinars and a couple of retreats in Boston. This year we had some weather challenges with that, but we've done our best, and it was wonderful to have you all here this weekend. And together we explore a curriculum that's focused on gender and Judaism and social justice. We mentor and train the fellows to help them use their voices to make positive change in the world, and we are so proud of the ways that you're all already doing that. One of the things we've really seen is the ways that Rising Voices is able to provide a safe community for people to explore their ideas, try out new things, be challenged, and then encouragement and a platform to bring those ideas to the world. And we are proud of the fact that the Rising Voices pieces are read by more than 40,000 people around the world each year on JWA alone, plus more through our syndication partners. And in these pieces, which I hope you'll hear little excerpts of some of them today, but I hope you'll have a chance to go back and read some more of them afterwards. Our fellows reflect on such a wide range of topics, from popular culture and representation to Judaism and feminism, privilege and responsibility, figuring out where you belong, and how to claim your space in the world. And I know that when you, even just the little taste that you're going to get today, you will really be impressed by their insights and their poise and energy. So my job actually is just to set the stage for all of you and to turn things over to the Rising Voices Fellows themselves. You will hear from these 12 amazing women who are representing their cohort of 18 and will soon be joining the 60 other graduates in our Rising Voices alumni network. And the young women today will be introducing one another, which is one of the things I love most about this Siyyum. But before you begin, I want to just say to the Rising Voices Fellows yourselves, I want you to take a moment to just notice what it feels like for you to be together today, and think back to what it's been like to be together this weekend. I think we spend a lot of time during the fellowship focused on words and ideas, and maybe not so much on feeling and what it means to sort of be in our strength in our bodies. But I want you to really think about and notice the warmth and trust and sense of community that you feel when you're together, because that's going to be one of the great resources that you will take with you as you leave us and move forward together. One of the things that I've heard from the Rising Voices alums over the years, and I have to say it wasn't one of our founding goals when we started the program, but has been one of the most beautiful unexpected outcomes, is just how much being part of this fellowship has taught young women about the value of being in community with other women and what kind of strength and support that can provide. And I know that you will all be in touch with one another and continue to be community together, and you will continue, you've already begun to encounter other Rising Voices graduates, and you will continue to build community with them too. But today I really want you just to take a moment to think about and to feel what it's like to be together, and to take with you also, and the wish I send you with is that you'll be able to continue to find and nurture those kinds of communities in your life going forward. So thank you all for being here, and I turn it over to all of you.
Our first reader is Ruby, one of our local fellows. Ruby has one of the most passionate voices and fiercest souls of the people I've ever met.
The internet's girlfriend and the power of the business card. As a teenage girl, I'm always typecast as the girlfriend of the internet. People assume that scrolling through Instagram is my workout routine, selfies are my art form, and Netflix shows are the extent of my worldly experience. Before we get any further, let me just say, hi, I'm a 17-year-old girl, and I'm a complex, thinking, learning, doing, creating human being. When I put myself out into the world, I must first overcome a myriad of assumptions about teenage girls before I get the chance to be seen as anything else. A few months ago, I printed my first business cards. I ordered a set of 200 gray rectangular cards with my photo, name, email, phone number, and a few words that describe who I am and what I do. Writer, poet, speaker, activist. But it's not what's on the card that matters, it's the card itself. I found that this 3.5 by 2 inch piece of paper is enough to slice through the prescribed internet's girlfriend image. I ran into an old Hebrew school teacher in a cafe recently. She has since begun working as a rabbi at a different congregation. I asked about the youth education programming at her new synagogue and expressed interest in engaging with her community as an Israel educator. She nodded along, but it wasn't until I pulled out a business card from my back pocket and handed it to her that I saw it register in her mind. This girl is for real. By handing her a tangible symbol of my professional intentions, I believe I broke through some of the assumptions that she may have made about me. I already mentioned the image of the screen-addicted airhead teenage girl, and I hope that since then I've debunked this stereotype. However, I'd also like to point out that the internet is a very real tool for activism and community organizing. Teenage girls have really never before had such an incredible platform for affecting change, and thus the rest of the world is afraid of our potential power. I know that teenage girls aren't the only ones who fall prey to stereotypes. This is something that most people experience in one way or another at one time or another. My business cards are my instrument in helping me to overcome these assumptions. They're my secret weapon. I now have the pleasure of introducing to you all my very own peer editor, Hannah. Not only has Hannah mastered the art of balancing constructive criticism with extremely supportive love, but Hannah has mastered the art of being herself. An artist, a leader, a deep thinker, a friend, a goddess. This is Hannah.
Bananas and the bourgeois, how I'm confronting my privilege. I believe one of the most important elements of my Jewish upbringing has been the expansion of my empathy. From a young age, I was taught that everyone deserves to be loved and accepted, and that it's the responsibility of the collective to take care of those who are suffering. These values are interwoven throughout Jewish history and scripture, and also provide a great foundation for my understanding of privilege and my place within it. But while I was quite educated on sociological structures of privilege, I only understood it at a conceptual level. I wasn't aware, really, that my privilege and power could actively affect other people, and even threaten the livelihoods of others. Last summer, I embarked on a URJ Mitzvah Corps service trip to Costa Rica. As part of our program, we spent a week in Yorkine, a community located in the Indigenous Reserve of Bree. My group became very close with the Indigenous Bree family who hosted us. Most evenings before dinner, we babysat the 2 infant girls in the family, Pariana and Kaylee. Many nights, I rocked little Kaylee to sleep before passing her off to her mother for bedtime. One night, the matriarch of the family, Doña Otilia, told us that before starting their educational program and tourism business, Yorkine's main source of income was selling bananas and cacao paste. They were grossly exploited by large food corporations, paid only 30 colones, which is roughly 5 cents, per kilo of bananas. As Doña Otilia spoke to us, I realized that I was the one buying those bananas, and therefore funding plantations dumping pesticides into rivers and paying their laborers literal cents. I was complicit. So what could I do to help protect other communities like Yorkine from exploitation and mistreatment? For one, I started buying produce from ethical producers. And fresh off the plane from Costa Rica, I started talking to basically everyone I knew about what I'd learned. I also wrote about my experience with the intention of spreading a message. I'm privileged enough to be able to transpose my thoughts onto a page and immortalize my feelings. I want to use this privilege to be an ally, to raise up the voices of those who have faced and continue to face injustice. Next up is Maddie. Maddie is from the suburbs of Philly. She's been an incredibly bright and cheerful presence within the cohort. Her writing is immersive and honest and really reflects her independent feminist spirit. So I give you Maddie Gell.
Looking at the cotel through a feminist lens. I remember being 4 years old and writing notes to God to put in the makeshift cotel at my preschool. It was about 3 feet tall and made out of colorful building blocks. Last summer, I had the opportunity to travel to Israel for the first time. I went on Ramah Seminar, a 6-week trip for teens from all over North America. I didn't know what to expect at the cotel. Needless to say, the mock version at my preschool could not have adequately prepared me for this experience. As I walked towards the wall, I felt the smooth cobblestones beneath my feet. Abruptly, I was yanked from my thoughts when my friend grabbed my arm and yelled, "You almost walked straight into the wrong part." I'd accidentally begun to walk into the men's side of the mechitza. As my friend guided me to the women's side, my excitement quickly turned to anger. As we got closer to the wall, the space around us got smaller and smaller. I struggled to even reach the wall, to press my forehead against the cool Jerusalem stone, to push my note into the cracks. Even as I was praying in one of the holiest places for the Jewish people, I couldn't fully focus. As I was chanting the Amidah, somewhere in the back of my mind, I was thinking that I should probably hurry up because another woman probably wanted my spot. My largely negative experience at the cotel forced me to take a step back and look at Judaism through a feminist lens, something I hadn't done before. I recalled many biblical stories about our patriarchs being heroes, but only 1 or 2 in which a woman takes center stage in a positive way. I thought about how I've never heard a Devar Torah from a female rabbi, even though I belong to a conservative, egalitarian synagogue. I may not be able to change how things work at the cotel, but I can view my experience through a feminist lens, and I can use my voice to advocate for more equal treatment of women in other Jewish spaces. Looking at Judaism from a feminist perspective has opened my eyes to a multitude of issues, but it hasn't made me any less proud to be Jewish. I'm very honored to introduce the incomparable Naomi. Naomi is someone I really look up to, whether it's hearing what she has to say during a webinar, or reading her blog posts, or listening to her tell a joke or give recommendations for a TV show or a movie or a book to read. I'm always so excited to listen to what insightful things she's going to add to the conversation.
Hello. Today I'm going to be reading My Power is My Privilege. Originally I had the title in Spanish, so it sounded a little bit more like flowy and nice, but I translated it so everyone knows what it is now. Yeah, okay. So power and privilege have always played and will continue to play a very significant role in my life. As a biracial Jewish woman, my life has always been complicated and oftentimes confusing. That being said, I do have an incredible amount of privilege. I have access to an incredible education, which will allow me to have better opportunities in my life. I come from an upper middle class family that works incredibly hard. I live in a house with my parents and my sister. I have the flexibility to do programs and other activities in and outside of school. However, this is not to say that I do not have my own personal struggles. I am a brown-skinned woman living in America. People who look like me have always been prosecuted and denied basic civil liberties. I constantly live in fear, and people constantly fear me. Wherever I seem to go, white individuals will act differently around me. For example, a while back, I was shopping with my mother at Bloomingdale's. I wandered off for a while so I could look at clothes on my own. After a bit, I noticed that an employee was following me around. I felt very uncomfortable, so I went and I found my mother. And after that, I noticed that the employee wasn't following me anymore. Were they following me around because I was Black? Were they following me around because I was a teenager and teenagers notoriously steal stuff from stores? Or maybe they just stopped following me because they saw my mother was a white woman. Does that make her more credible? What is that supposed to mean? So those are the types of questions that I think about all the time. I feel my heartbeat pick up when I see the flashing blue and red lights of a police car. I often feel excluded from groups that consist mostly of white and Black individuals. People will automatically assume that I am angry because of the courage and privilege that I have to raise my own voice. Even in the Jewish community, I sometimes feel like I do not belong. In the United States, only about 7% of Jews identify as something other than white. I might belong to a temple that is considered to be diverse and Reconstructionist, but it is still mostly white. It is often hard not to feel like an outsider. I love how blended my identity is and how I can be a part of so many categories. However, I do face discrimination and struggle sometimes. It's not okay, but it is the way that it seems to be. That's why I use the power that I have to attempt to change my life and others' lives for the better. This is Emma. Emma is from Madison, Wisconsin, and actually, a fun fact, Wisconsin is the biggest producer of cheese in the United States. This is great because Emma loves certain types of cheese, and that's awesome. But in addition to that, Emma is just a genuinely kind person who brings such a loving and caring energy to any space she walks into. She's just a natural leader, and she is one who can articulate her feelings perfectly to any group of people, and that is amazing. So in short, Emma is an absolutely phenomenal woman, and this is Emma Nathanson.
May the faith be with you. On a rainy morning in March, my history teacher greeted my class with a direction. Raise your hand if you would have died in the Holocaust. The classroom I was sitting in was in Adelaide, Australia, almost 10,000 miles away from my home in Madison, Wisconsin. My dad's sabbatical had led us to the state of South Australia for 6 months while he did research at a local university. In South Australia, the Jewish population is 1,000, out of a total population of 1.7 million residents. To put those statistics in perspective, only a slightly higher number of Australians tick the box for Jewish than for Jedi in the last census. With the lightsaber as likely to appear in my class as a Star of David necklace, I was surprised to watch around half the students raise their hands to join my own. My history teacher nodded. Yes, he said, the Nazis targeted those who didn't look Aryan, those who didn't have blonde hair, blue eyes, or pale skin. I looked at my classmates who had risen their hands, students confident they would have met their demise under Hitler's final solution. All had brown hair, some had brown eyes, none were Jewish. To make matters worse, my history teacher avoided the subject of the Holocaust for the rest of our term-long unit on the third break. Because I didn't have support, I didn't confront my teacher about his inaccurate portrayal of history or about the lack of Holocaust education. I also didn't do anything when I found the words Jew hunter scrawled on the leg of a desk. For so long, I had based my Jewish identity around the other Jews present in my life. In Australia, I couldn't rely on others to define my Judaism for me. For a while, this meant I silenced my identity to remain inconspicuous. Later in my visit, my friend's brother came to pick her up from school and offered me a ride. When he asked about my religious practices, I decided to take a risk and tell him more about my Jewish identity. Wow, he remarked, you're the first Jew I've ever met. He wanted to know more. Do Jews have a God? What holidays do we celebrate? I answered him hesitantly at first, but my confidence grew as the conversation progressed. Finally, I was able to take the first steps towards finding my confidence in my culture, getting the presence of my Jewish community sustaining my every answer. So, I have a confession. I think Emily Axelrod is the coolest person ever. Fun tip, she got to talk to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the airport. But honestly, that interaction didn't make her cool. It just demonstrated how awesome she is. Emily had the incredible confidence, kindness, motivation, and poise to talk to AOC. These skills emanate from Emily every day, and I'm so lucky to know such a powerful and fantastic woman.
In education and allyship. A few days before summer vacation, I got the text. It read, I have something to tell you, but I don't want you to hate me. My 7th grade heart started racing. Sitting in the middle of the crowded gymnasium the next day at Pyle Middle School, she told me, I'm bisexual. I like guys and girls. I knew that she had just taken a huge leap of faith, and I wanted to be there for her in any way I could. We had only known each other for a year, but she had become one of my closest friends. The following fall, she approached me with a proposal. How would you feel about starting a gay-straight alliance? She asked. I'm in, I responded. What do we have to do? We met with our guidance counselor the following week. She was completely on board, but told us that starting this club would most definitely be an uphill battle. As word spread about what we were trying to do, a few students approached us in confidence and came out, sharing that they needed a place to talk about their identities. A handful of students made snide remarks about the existence of a GSA, but these comments only further emphasized its necessity. A few weeks later, we were finally able to meet with the principal. He informed us that he was personally in support of a GSA, but that he was worried about pushback from parents and conservative teachers. He told us that the meetings would have to be secretive, and that information about the club would have to spread solely by word of mouth. Despite these restrictions, we pushed ahead with a GSA. We reasoned that a restricted GSA was better than none, and ran with it. In our meetings, we mixed lesson plans with open discussions, careful to honor confidentiality and allow students enough anonymity to remain comfortable. The Pyle Middle School GSA exists to this day and remains a safe space for LGBTQ+ students and allies. A number of adults have since approached me and remarked how brave it was of me to start this club. But I don't think it was brave. My LGBTQ+ peers who came to the meetings and opened up about their lived experiences were the brave ones. My good friend and co-founder was the brave one. I simply saw a problem and used my privilege to help elevate the voices of a marginalized group. That's not bravery, that's responsibility. Next up is Alana. Incredibly well-spoken, Alana's contributions to every conversation are wise beyond her years. Whether she's saving the planet through mechanical engineering or taking down bigots on Clash of Clans, Alana exemplifies what it means to be a Jewish feminist. Fixing the flaws in perfection. I've come across many girls in my life who seem to be blessed with every gift imaginable. They are kind and honest, they are beautiful and funny, they are somehow talented at anything they try their hand at, and they are so very clever. These are the sorts of girls that society would deem perfect. The one attribute that I've consistently noticed in perfect girls is that they are also humble and quiet. Self-consciousness and shyness have turned into attractive traits, and we see this throughout modern media. And if a girl does acknowledge her accomplishments, it is often seen as narcissistic or arrogant. Being proud is considered a problem. Girls are supposed to apologize for loving who they are, and in doing so, apologize for being who they are. This message didn't start with current pop culture, though. There's a Jewish poem called A Woman of Valor. Originally from the book of Proverbs, a woman of valor describes the perfect woman. The poem begins, a woman of valor who can find, for her price is beyond pearls. And then it goes on to list her many good qualities. What the poem never says is that she should praise herself or that she should feel pride for her actions. In fact, the poem never once mentions that the woman should feel any emotions regarding her actions at all. The perfect girl image promotes the idea that a girl should provide for others with no want for herself. This perfect girl is taught to find others to love her because she is not allowed to love herself. Teaching that philosophy to girls is very dangerous. The ideal we are taught to strive for is this perfect girl, and that girl cannot acknowledge that she deserves to be happy. This all probably seems immensely dark. However, there is a way to change this situation. We can take steps towards progress today. If you're really good at math, shout it from the rooftop. If you want an award, write it in the sky. Find a mirror and say to the person looking back at you, I'm incredible. I deserve to be happy. I work hard and I try my best. I don't have to apologize for who I am. There's nothing to apologize for. I'm proud of who I am. I have the honor of introducing Emma. Fun fact about Emma, she's been to 5 countries with 1 layover. From her article about feminism in media with Wonder Woman to Girl Speaks, the organization she founded, to speaking out against rape culture, Emma will not sit still, nor should she.
No, I can't take this joke. It was lunchtime at school, and my sandwich was shaking in my hands as I sat on the cold metal bench, listening to a group of boys nearby. I could only hear snippets of what they were saying, but what I caught was enough. In between mutters of slut, the message was clear. They were making rape jokes. A couple hours later, I was walking to my last class of the day. I'd managed to stop running over what I'd wished I'd said at lunch. Instead, I comforted myself with the half-hearted promise that next time I'd say something. Then I saw him, one of the boys from earlier. And there it was, my second chance. I could tell him how wrong he was to say those things and how many people he'd inadvertently hurt in his carelessness. But I couldn't do it. I felt frozen, just like at lunch. I was a freshman, he was a junior, I didn't hold any of the power, and I didn't even really know what I would say. Listen, I whispered to a friend sitting in front of me. I have to tell you what happened today. A couple minutes into our discussion, I could feel someone's gaze burning into the back of my head, and I knew it was him. What's your deal? He said, his words sharp and accusing. Can't you take a joke? Why do you care so much? This was it. I could actually finally say something. It's not that I can't take a joke, I started. It's that yours wasn't funny. I told him what he'd said wasn't humorous, it was dismissive. It made a mockery of unimaginable pain. Worse, it normalized, condoned, and even encouraged assaults. I brought up statistics about how only 5 out of every 1,000 perpetrators will ever spend a single night in jail. I tried to explain to him how what seemed like a casual joke was actually emblematic of an entire culture in which survivors of rape are tossed aside. When the boy rolled his eyes and said, "Whatever, you just don't get it," I didn't care. I felt strong in a new way. I'd proven something to myself. And I knew that the next time I heard rape jokes midway into a bite of a sandwich, I'd be able to reach past the knot forming in my stomach and find the courage to speak again. And this is Nina. She's such a powerful and inspirational force in our cohort and in every day. Her constant fighting for space and rights for the LGBT+ community and women in conservative Jewish spaces reminds me what I strive for every day. She has brought such a light and joy to our community, and I am so thankful that she is here. Please welcome Nina.
Building inclusivity at my Jewish day school. This past January, I became the head of my school's Gender and Sexuality Alliance. Last year, 2 seniors started the club at my small Jewish day school in Overland Park, Kansas. This was a huge step for my school, and it finally created a place for queer students and allies to get together. This club meant a lot to me and to other students at my school, but since there were only a few members and the founders were seniors, it ended when they graduated. At the beginning of this year, the faculty advisor of the original club asked me if I'd like to restart the club and lead a week-long class during what we call Wintrums, a fun week of easy classes right when we got back from winter break. I gladly agreed to take this on, and my goal was to have the club continue past this one week. As much as I was excited to restart the club, I was also worried about possible backlash from some of the faculty. I felt very strongly that both middle school and high school students should be welcome in the club, but I knew that this had previously been a point of contention since some teachers and administrators believe that LGBTQ+ content is not acceptable for middle school students. Today, 90% of kids in the club are in middle school, and even though I've had to adapt certain lesson plans to make sure they're appropriate for younger students, it's been awesome seeing all of these middle schoolers so involved and interested in LGBTQ+ identities and issues. On the last day of Wintrums, students in the GSA took GLSEN's school climate survey, and collectively we rated our school between hostile and passive on their scale. This was shocking to all of us. Passive made sense, but none of us had ever experienced anything that would suggest overt hostility towards LGBTQ students. However, when we looked at the questions, it was clear that our school's lack of resources was a real issue. After seeing the results, I knew that the club was something that our school desperately needed. The club, which we named Rainbow Rams, quickly grew from 4 students to 10 to 15 students. For a small school like mine, that is huge. We've done a lot of good work so far, but my goal is to eventually have our school be fully inclusive and welcoming. Next up is Abigail. She has been so fun to get to know and talk to throughout this year. She has the most infectious laugh and smile, and she continues to inspire me with her amazing social justice work in her community.
Standing for social justice at my school. Every year, my high school hosts a social justice week, and this year, I'm the primary organizer. In preparation, our planning committee discusses broad social and political issues and invites experts and activists from our community to share their wisdom and experiences. Among the people we've invited are formerly incarcerated students to teach us about the transformative power of prison education, members of the National Alliance on Mental Illness to address stigma around mental health issues in school, local environmentalists to discuss climate change action, Jewish studies professors to speak about Holocaust awareness and anti-Semitism, and members of Black Lives Matter Ithaca to engage us in discourse about race, poverty, and privilege. I'm organizing this year's event around the theme of citizenship. This choice was inspired by Claudia Rankin's book, Citizen, An American Lyric, which students and speakers alike have been invited to read in preparation for the event.
Although Social Justice Week is an annual tradition at my high school, this is the first year that students and speakers are being encouraged to read a common text. I chose this book because it is powerful, radical, and short. Rankin's writing is angry and sympathetic at the same time, which I think is part of what makes it both accessible and subversive. When addressing any number of social justice issues, it's important to try and educate ourselves as much as possible, while also recognizing that we can never fully understand identities we don't possess and experiences we haven't personally encountered. Rankin's book focuses a lot on issues having to do with racism and racial justice, and I hope that students and presenters will be able to apply some of the large takeaways and lessons during our event. With Rankin's text as a guide, students at my school can acknowledge and judge their relationships to power, privilege, and oppression. I'm anticipating a Social Justice Week full of learning, growth, and important conversations. This is Ava. Ava is one of the easiest people to talk to and have substantial conversations with. I was with Ava when we first piled into the taxi after meeting each other in August, and I remember that her presence made me feel so warm and welcome in a new place.
Privilege and the chosen people. I've been raised with a sense of pride in my Jewish identity. My childhood is filled with memories of sleeping under my dad's talit during shul, celebrating holidays with my family and friends, and warm challah every Friday night. I feel as if I won the lottery by being born Jewish, as so many of my most cherished memories and values are tied to this part of my identity. As proud as I am of my Jewish identity, I've always been troubled by one of the fundamental ideas in Judaism, that we are the chosen people. I take issue with the idea that just because I was born Jewish, I inherently have a special privileged relationship with God. This supposed religious privilege, this implied chosenness, has made me consider my relationship to privilege in a larger sense. I am a white, upper-middle-class Jewish teen from Chicago, and I've always benefited from various forms of privilege. I went to private school until 9th grade. I have ample representation of people who look like me in the media, and I've never had to get a job in order to support myself or my family. When I was younger, I wasn't aware of this privilege. When I became aware, I didn't know how to handle this knowledge, so I just ignored it. I figured that I couldn't do anything to change my privileged status, and therefore it didn't matter. However, as I've gotten older, I've come to realize that if I truly want to be an intersectional feminist, as well as a righteous Jew, I must recognize my own privilege and be part of the fight against the structures that make it possible. I'm still working on recognizing my privilege as part of my intersectional feminism. For example, I only began to significantly question the Women's March once I heard about possible anti-Semitism, but I hadn't previously taken issue with the march's overwhelming whiteness. This realization taught me that I need to take into account a wide variety of viewpoints and needs when it comes to my activism. I can't just react when something affects me personally. Whether it's questioning Judaism's supposed religious superiority or acknowledging my privilege and using it to advocate for those who don't have it, I've come to understand that recognizing one's own privilege and examining its impact is a key aspect of approaching the world in a truly intersectional way. This is Mirabelle. Mirabelle is a joy to be around. She is a role model to us all, and her passion for justice and finding creative solutions is evident whenever she speaks about the corrupt education system, local politics, and everything and anything else that comes up in conversation with her. Even when we are exhausted and delirious, she never fails to put a smile on our faces.
My big fat feminist bat mitzvah. Judaism and feminism have always been significant parts of my identity. I was born into them. From my father, I inherited thick, curly hair and a nose that's a little extra lumpy. From my mother, I inherited an understanding of gender equality, the wage gap, sexual harassment, and knowledge about feminist leaders such as Gloria Steinem. Before I was truly acquainted with the word, I was a feminist. When I was in 7th grade and preparing for my bat mitzvah, I read a summary of my Torah portion, Vayetze, for the first time. In Vayetze, Jacob, one of Judaism's forefathers, and Laban, father to our matriarchs Rachel and Leah, both grossly mistreat the women in their lives. In short, Laban forces his daughters to marry Jacob in exchange for Jacob working for him for 14 years. Initially, Jacob was supposed to marry Rachel, but Laban tricks Jacob into marrying Leah first. Once married, Leah is blessed by God with fertility, while Rachel is not. Rachel gives her maid, Bilhah, to Jacob for him to impregnate, and Leah does the same with her maid, Zilpah, in a seemingly strange competition. While the text leads us to believe that Rachel and Leah simply gave their handmaidens to Jacob in an act of villainy, their actions were only products of their identity and place within an ancient patriarchal society. Their only value and currency were as wives and mothers, and they had almost no agency. Thus, their actions in this story reflect that sad truth. The very idea that I would have to proudly chant and accept this story, this version of Judaism that so obviously conflicted with my feminist sensibility, forced me to question my Jewish identity in a very real way, and for the first time. It was only through writing my Devar Torah as a spoken word piece about this grim fairy tale-like sequence in our Torah that I finally began to understand the complex relationship between Judaism and feminism in my own life. While I've only recently begun to deeply examine the intersections between Judaism and feminism and apply them to my life, my feminism has already become rooted in my Jewish identity. As I continue to grow, my understanding can only further deepen.
Wow. Can we give one more hand for all of our scholars? Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa. I'm the Associate Director of Programs and Education at the Jewish Women's Archive. I first want to say thank you to our fellows for sharing your powerful words with us today. I read every piece before it's published on our blog, but it's still always incredibly moving to hear the fellows read their work out loud. I hope everyone here is feeling similarly inspired by what they just heard. I now have the honor of introducing our keynote speaker for today, Rabbi Elise Winnick, who is the Senior Director of Learning and Engagement at Combined Jewish Philanthropies, or CJP, as it's known around here. You can read more about Rabbi Winnick's work on the back of your program booklet, but the introduction I'd like to give is a little more personal. I've known Rabbi Winnick for over 10 years, since I was an undergraduate student at Brandeis University, where she served as the Jewish chaplain. I was a leader in the Reform Minyan, and Rabbi Winnick and her family were fixtures at our Friday night Shabbat services. This included her then very young daughter, Shira, who years later would become a Rising Voices Fellow. I am thrilled to bring up Rabbi Winnick as a leader in Boston's Jewish community, an RVF parent, and someone who has played a role in shaping my own Jewish life. Rabbi Winnick, I turn the floor over to you to share your message with us.
So I want to express my gratitude to Judith and to Mickey, but mostly to Clarissa, because she's been my point of contact on this, and because I knew when I entrusted Shira to her last year that it would all be fine. And this is, for me today, a bit of a tikkun, a repair, because last year we weren't able to be at Shira's Siyyum. Shira wasn't able to be at Shira's Siyyum because it was the same day as her graduation from high school. And we weighed back and forth and decided that probably that was the one we ought to do. So I want to think with you today a little bit about the idea of the portability of the sacred. Except for about 950 years, which sounds like a lot, but in the scheme of the world is not as much as it might seem. We have always carried our sanctity with us. From the portable sanctuary in the desert, which preceded the temple, to the brilliant reinvention of our system of worship from altar-bound sacrifice to portable prayer, enabling the Jewish people to remain tethered between heaven and earth, even after the destruction of the temple. In his book, The Sabbath, Abraham Joshua Heschel writes, Judaism teaches us to be attached to holiness in time, to be attached to sacred events, to learn how to consecrate sanctuaries that emerge from the magnificent stream of a year. The Sabbaths are our great cathedrals, and our Holy of Holies is a shrine that neither the Romans nor the Germans were able to burn. That portability has rendered the Jewish people able to adapt to a changing world and able to bring our particular brand of holiness throughout that world. Prayer is one way we do that, raising our voices in song. But the way we raise our voices to support one another and to be transformative is equally holy. In anticipation of today, I posted the following query on Facebook. Who would you identify as the women who are thought leaders in today's Jewish community? In the amount of time it took you to think of your answer, how many men, no names, just a number, came to mind? Do you think that women lead differently and the thought leader construct doesn't apply? Though first applied to Ralph Waldo Emerson in 1876, the term thought leader came into vogue through the business world in the 1990s. It's meant to reflect a person or an organization whose work and words influence others. There is much debate on whether it is a useful label, second only to the term public intellectual, which refers to an academic who bridges the worlds of academia and public policy. So thought leader is not without its limitations, but it's a useful frame for us for today at least. We can use the definition actually posted by one of my respondents, someone who has changed my thinking and whose wisdom I seek out when I'm not sure what I think about something. Now, the responses to my Facebook post were really remarkable. More than 75 names were posted there. They spanned, oh, Judith, you were on the list. They spanned denomination, field, and geography. No one said that they thought of more than one or two men when they heard the term, at least no one admitted to it. Someone suggested that women are more thinking leaders than thought leaders, meaning that their leadership was more active than thought leader might imply. And countless respondents articulated the reality that women have not been allowed to occupy that kind of space, and that their voices are not sufficiently elevated by others. Since 2013, Rising Voices has been actively engaged in changing that, both elevating young women's voices and training them to be heard. I was excited when my daughter was accepted into the fellowship, thinking about how it would prepare her to be heard in the future. And then, in March of 2018, I happened to come across one of her blog posts on the Times of Israel, at which point it hit me. Your influence is not something you are just honing for the future, unless the future is now. This is a very special brand of holiness that you will carry with you always. If the rest of us are lucky, your holiness will spill over and out into the world, healing brokenness and creating joy, changing the world for the better by making yourselves heard and by amplifying others. And I can hardly wait. Mazal tov to all of you, and may you go from strength to strength.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Winner. And thank you for doing that great research for us on Facebook. So we're now gonna move to the part of the program where we present our fellows with their completion certificates and a JWA t-shirt of their choosing. And if you are experiencing any FOMO, fear of missing out, don't worry, we sell them on our website, jwa.org/shop. So this is our wonderful executive assistant, Abby, who's going to help me out. So to the fellows, just to give you instructions from here, if that makes sense. As I call you up, come up, we'll have a thing here, and then we'll all line up, and we'll probably take some photos before you sit down. Okay. Graduate some fellows. Emily Axelrod. Naomi Bethune. Emma Nathanson. Hannah Downing. Ava Berkowitz. Emma Cohn. Abigail Glickman. Madeline Gelb. Nina Barron. Ruby Russell. Mirabelle Sandler. Alana Jacobs. So we are missing, first of all, let's give a hand to as Judith had mentioned, this was a rescheduled event, and because of that, we are missing a few of our fellows. So I just wanted to read their names and also acknowledge their completion of the Rising Voices Fellowship. Phoebe Chapnick Sorkin. Lily Drazen. Amy Jarkow. Shira Mintz. Molly Wiener. And Lila Zimmer. Thank you and congratulations to our fellows. Everyone get their photos? Oh no. Or we can do it after, or we'll do it now. Let's do it after.
Well, I get the pleasure of thanking everyone for being here today. So I just want to say thank you so much from all of us at JWA. My name's Nikki. I'm the Senior Director of Programs and Operations at the Jewish Women's Archive. We're just so thrilled. Every year, this is just such a wonderful event. We're filled with so much hope and inspiration. So we just want to thank everyone for being here, for being part of this lovely event. Rabbi Winnick, for your wonderful comments. I really want to say a special thank you to the fellows. You give me so much hope. We actually had a workshop yesterday that focused on finding hope during this moment, and I know it's a troubling time for a lot of people, and there's a lot of darkness in the world. And so it really, I know for me, it was incredibly hopeful to be in your presence this weekend and throughout this whole year, just to hear your words and just to see the community that you're creating here together, and to know that you're going to bring your message out to the world gives me so much hope for the future of our world. So thank you so much for that. I also just want to say a quick thank you to all the staff and interns at JWA who are here who made this event possible. Thank you so much. And also to Emma, who is our wonderful, fearless Rising Voices Fellow alum coordinator. So you'll all be invited to join the Alumni Network, which is growing and growing each year, nearing that 100 young women mark, which is incredible. We've been so lucky to have just such fantastic fellows helping each other kind of as we move into the world. So we're excited to invite you into that, and I'm sure I know you've all had a chance to meet Emma, but she's wonderful. And last but not least, I want to say a most special thank you to Larissa. Can you come up here for a second, Larissa? So you all have been here for just a year with Larissa, but I've had the pleasure of working with her for the past almost 4 years, and I think you can hear me. Larissa is the model for the Rising Voices Fellowship. She is so fearless, never hesitates in bringing her message to the world. She is so strong, such an inspiration to me, and I know to all of you, and she put in countless hours to make this fellowship what it is, and we're just so lucky to have her here, and I want to say a big thank you. We love you. And one thing from the students for the two of you, we have t-shirts for you both, signed and designed by all of us. Oh, can you tell everyone what this says? It's a very loose translation of uppity worship, which is our motto as fellows. Thank you. So thank you all so much for coming. And let's all pray for the family. Okay. I forgot to give these. Yeah, we're gonna take some photos, I think, maybe in this. Oh, yeah, should we, okay, wait, hold on, everybody stay in your seats. We're taking a selfie. Okay. Is your hand? Is everybody in? No. Mirabelle, you smush. I'm proud of us.